Yes, at the 18th meeting of the Board of Lake County Commissioners, would all those who are willing and able please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Grant us, O Lord, light to our understanding, prudence in our investigating, foresight in our planning, sincerity in our deliberating, the grace to follow truth in our judgment. Help us to be moved in our decision, neither by fear nor by self-interest, and to do our work faithfully. May we respect the authority vested in us, for thou art the source of all authority. And may we use it in our directives for the common good and for thy honor and glory. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Present.
Commissioner Young.
Present.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
I am here. Okay. Public comments. Do we have anyone in the audience wishing to address this board? Mr. Massey and others. Yay. Good to see everyone.
Good morning. Brian Massey, 8196 Rainbow Drive in Concord. Before I start my request, I want to first say that I'm a big supporter of the Lake County Board of Elections, Ross McDonald, Jan Clare, and Dale Fellows. So any comments that I make or questions or requests are not meant to impugn any of their conduct or their actions. I just want commissioners to know that.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
And I want you guys to know. What I was not, I just received the resolution regarding the new voting machines that they'd like to purchase for $581,000. And I was thinking about it for the last few days, and my concern is the wireless connections. Again, I'm not an expert in this area, but I was fooling around with my own wireless connectors at home and had all sorts of problems. But then I found out there's wireless signals, in our neighborhood, and I just wondered, are you commissioners, are you as worried as I am about the possibility of external interference or hacking into the existing machines or the new machines? So I'm wondering if it would be prudent that if we could have outside sources, experts in this area, that could actually probe the existing equipment that we have to see if there are some vulnerabilities. Now you may say, well, why check out the existing machinery if we're going to replace it? Well, if the existing machinery has vulnerabilities and ESS told us that they didn't have, I'm not sure that I'd want to purchase additional equipment from the same manufacturer. That being said, would we be willing to spend some money trying to determine if the new equipment can be accessed from external sources? If none of those are, if timing is an issue with the purchase of the equipment, if we were to go through the study and determine that in fact you can access the equipment from external sources, and we've signed a contract, is there any possibility of putting a clause, sort of an escape clause in the contract that says what you purported ESS is not true? So I bring that to the commissioner's attention that I am concerned about that. Not that there's anything, I don't mean to imply there's anything nefarious at all with the Board of Elections of Lake County. I think they do an outstanding job. I'm just trying to be extremely cautious. If you're spending, $2.8 million and $581 coming from the Lake County taxpayers, I'd like to be doubly, triply sure that it can be accessed. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And then later, I believe it's item number 10, we will be discussing this very issue. And just a little bit of a sneak preview, there is a certificate of compliance in our possession from the United States Elections Assistance Commission, and that certification has also been accepted by Frank LaRose, Secretary of State. I'll let our Board of Elections people address that. But yes,
Yeah, again, I was not privy to that because I just picked up the
yes, sir.
The resolution.
I think that'd be the best context if there's no objections from Board of Elections folks. Thank you. Yeah, that when we get to that item, that way we don't have to have somebody watch 3 hours of a commissioner meeting to connect the dots, which could be a little daunting. A little reference back to our last meeting. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Okay, Mr. Lima, I'm sorry. I'm just going in the order in which I saw. Ladies first. He's yielding. He's yielding. So there you go. Mr. Lima, thank you.
That way I can get unnervous faster.
Get unnervous faster.
Goodness. Okay, good morning, Commissioners.
Good
Becky
morning.
Lynch, 8040 King Memorial. Okay. I come before you today as a founding member of the Lake County Data Board. At our April meeting, I was made aware of the new equipment in your resolution number 10. And under Ohio Revised Code, the Data Board duties are stated at ORC 307.842. And it begins, quote, "The County Automatic Data Board shall coordinate the use of all automatic or electronic data processing or record keeping equipment, software, or services in use throughout county offices." And it goes on. And I'd like to say I'm in my 5th year on this board, and I value the work that we do. I bring this information to you today for consideration to that end and to clarify the need for this equipment to be reviewed and approved per statute of the Data Board. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Becky. I will frame my questions for legal while I'm sitting here, so we'll come back to also another item number 10. I believe that we've got a letter, but
If you want, Commissioner, I can explain now what our office's opinion is on this issue with regard to the data board, or we can wait until item number 10, whatever you prefer.
It's always a good thing to see you at the starting block if you want to take a swing at it.
All right.
Little backstory, always asking for
Yes.
a report, and I get no report, Commissioner.
Now, just so Ms. Lynch understands, Recorder Lynch, our office did research this issue. And yes, you're correct with your statements about the data board, but Revised Code Section 3506.05 sets up a very particular way of voting machines being approved by the state of Ohio. And it, quite frankly, preempts any data board input. And kind of touches upon Mr. Massey's question too. Any voting machines that are used in the state have to be certified by the Secretary of State and the Board of Voting Machine Examiners. It's a very detailed statutory framework, and quite frankly, it's the only machines that can be used are those that are approved by the Secretary of State. Data board does not have input on these machines.
And just for benefit of legal, there's some discussion about on the sales order. There's voting machines, clearly voting equipment. There's computers. There's a server, standalone computer, some other accessories. I'll always mispronounce it, appurtenances to the voting machines. So would this be looked at as a system? So they're all, and I'm scrambling, I apologize, I'm scrambling through the scope of the certificate of compliance, and I haven't checked the sales order against the hardware, but they do talk about Dell products and the workstations. I haven't got into the server yet. I'm assuming that the server is a listed item. So would this be looked at as a system? Because I'm thinking jurisdictional now. I think we can make an argument that voting machines, again, I think we should have a healthy discussion on this. Maybe be better when we get to item 10. Maybe have that in the back of your mind for some time to think about that.
Well, I don't care how much time there is, Commissioner. All due respect, an IT guy, I am not, and I feel that's kind of getting into that realm.
You could look it up.
What I do know is that these machines and all the pieces and parts in them have to be certified by the Secretary of State statutorily.
Yes. but these are items not, again, I'd probably be more appropriate when we're talking Board of Elections and we get to item 10, but there is part of the sale, in addition to ballot marking devices, I apologize if I didn't use the right term there, and tabulators. There's also a server, there's a standalone computer, there's accessories that are not necessarily voting machines, but again, I'm scrambling, and I apologize, I'm literally, because I have good question, a jurisdictional concern of, does Data Board have jurisdiction over the computers? I think we can make a good argument that they do not have our jurisdiction over the voting machines.
The Data Board has no jurisdiction over any of these voting machines and the accompanying software,
There you go. Okay.
other pieces and parts, as I guess I call them.
Okay, so we can let the record show that. And then when we get to that section, item 10, we could perhaps have that conversation again just to make it part of the discussion. I don't want me to be redundant, but this is such an important issue. We got to get it right. And I don't want somebody taking something out of context. So, yeah. Without objection, if you're okay, we could have that more thorough when we get to item 10. I'm looking to the Board of Elections. I'm getting nods, so that's a good thing. Okay, thank you. And continuing.
You have a question?
Yeah, Commissioner Young, yes, sir.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm
You
sorry.
were raising your hand, Faith?
Oh,
Yes, I wanted to just bring something to the attention of the commissioners.
If you
unless
wish.
Mr. Lano would like to go.
Mr. Limer, you're in a charitable, yet again, yielding to yet another fine lady in our audience. Thank you, sir.
I'll go last.
You'll be our anchor man. Gotcha. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Commissioner Young.
Good morning, commissioners. I'm new on the data board. I'm 4 months in, so I'm learning about.
Name and.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Faith Andrews, Lake County Clerk of Courts, live in Concord.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. I'm new on the data board. I'm 4 months in. So reviewing the statute and everything, I felt like I probably would be involved in a review. I thought that's what I was doing. Assistant Prosecutor Hackman has indicated, no, there's a statute that supersedes that. However, while I was preparing for what I thought would be a data board review of the voting systems, I uncovered something called the Project Everest. It's a study that was done when Secretary of State Jennifer Brunner was in office, and it's fairly devastating. I have not seen any study in Ohio because, again, I was just looking into the background of the ES&S machines, not taking into consideration any other state or any studies in any other state. I was looking at the state of Ohio because that's what we care about, is the state of Ohio. I've not seen a study that discounts this in any way, shape, or form. I do not know if these things were addressed, yet we have ES&S machines. So I'll hand these up for the record, and I'm sorry I only made 2. I promise I'll make 3 from now on.
If you want to just hand them to our clerk, that'll.
Absolutely.
she'll make it.
But let me read just the first sentence of the conclusion.
Thank you, ma'am.
As detailed in the previous sections, we found significant and pervasive vulnerabilities throughout the ES&S system. That just causes me some concern. That's all I have. Thank you so much.
Oh, very good. Thank you, ma'am. Okay.
I have a question.
Commissioner Young, yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dave.
He's the anchor man. At least we're in a good spirit today for the moment.
This system, is it widely used now throughout Ohio? I direct this to you folks with the board.
Yes, it is.
It is.
And for the viewing audience, the answer is yes, it is.
Have there been any problems reported, or?
Can we perhaps maybe better appropriate, this will be a discussion on item number 10, and they're off microphone, so the
Okay.
viewing audience is not hearing their responses. So unless you want to take up a microphone or take the podium.
Do you want to wait?
We can
I
wait
would
till
prefer to
10.
keep it
Discuss
connected.
everything under one item, or we can pick and choose?
That would be much, Commissioner Young, would you accept
Sure,
having that
that'd be
discussion
fine.
under item 10?
That's
Thank
a
you
good
for
idea.
understanding, sir. Thank you. Okay, hold on. Now I'm going to look over to this side of the room. We got anything to add? Are we good? Okay, all right. Mr. Lima, thank you, sir. Thank you, ladies.
Good morning, Commissioners. Dave Lima, 7774 Litchfield Drive in Mentor. Following last week's meeting, I contacted Sheriff Leon Bruno and asked for the following information. How many inmates are currently awaiting trial or sentencing? How many are incarcerated because of their inability to post bail? And how many individuals are housed in the jail for a probation violation? The sheriff provided me with the 2019 annual report and a report of the jail roster as of April 3rd, 2019. Since the data provided by the sheriff did not answer the three questions, those awaiting trial, those unable to make bail, and inmates who were there for violation of probation, I decided to review the jail roster to get a more current and accurate picture. My review found that as April 30th of this year, 329 inmates were housed in the Lake County Jail compared to the 396 on April 3rd, 2019. The current population is below the 350 bed capacity of the jail. These numbers do not reflect significant overcrowding, the primary driver of jail construction. My further review of the jail roster on April 30th of this year enabled me to answer two of my questions. 168 inmates were awaiting trial or sentencing, and 91 were incarcerated for violation of probation. I was further able to determine that of the 329, 234 were incarcerated for non-violent crimes: probation violation, bond revocation, drugs, failure to appear, and other non-violent crimes like driving under the influence of alcohol. Obviously, there is a need for more recent data, and that's called for in order to determine the degree of overcrowding, if any, and the population trend. Is it decreasing, increasing, or remaining the same? If the more recent trends indicate a level or decreasing population, renovation of the existing facility should be seriously considered. Renovation of the existing facility would surely be less costly to the taxpayer than the projected $100 million cost of new construction. My estimate, based on the $100 million facility, would cost every Lake County adult and child $434. Renovation or new construction would place a significant burden on the Lake County taxpayer. Would it not be appropriate to put this question on the ballot and ask them what they want to do? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for your well-reasoned presentation. Much appreciated. Okay, and we have no one else in the audience wishing to address the board. Jason, do we have any electronic submissions of questions for the board? Indicating yes, you do.
Good morning, Commissioners. I do have three fairly lengthy public comments this morning that I will enter into the record on behalf of the individuals. The first one is 2 pages long, so I will read this. I do not know if you want me to pause after the first public record or public information request and proceed to the second one, or how.
We'll see how it goes. How's that?
Okay. All right, so the first public comment is from a Daria Morgendorfer. This was submitted this morning at May 6th at 8:47. Begin public comment. Questions for the Board of Lake County Commissioners. Please feel free to answer individually or collectively. Commissioner Young, let me begin by stating I am sorry for the loss of your wife and your health issues. However, this does not relieve your responsibilities to represent the people of Lake County. Time and time again, you've demonstrated that you don't even put an effort to review information before you. At the April 29th, 2021 Commissioner meeting, you said that you haven't even read the report that you commissioned for review and recommendations of the Lake County Jail. You have an obligation to at least read the documents costing tens of thousands of dollars that are referring to the repairs and improvements costing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, with recommendations exceeding $100 million. Do you realize that you have earned the reputation of being the least engaged and perhaps most partisan commissioner in the history of Lake County? Next paragraph. Commissioner Young, in the absence of being a well-informed leader, you consistently attacked those leaders that are well-informed. Your ongoing criticisms of perhaps the most liked elected official in Lake County and top law enforcement officer, Sheriff Leon Bruno, is disgraceful. When you continue to refer to Sheriff Leon Bruno as biased, and in previous meetings saying people like him just want new things whether they need it or not, is an attack on the justice system. When confronted by Sheriff Leon Bruno, your actions being offensive, why did you persist with offensive behavior? Next paragraph. Commissioner Young, you've openly said you support the Vera Institute and their beliefs. This is an organization that supports not only defunding the police, but dismantling the justice system. I accept that your open support of Vera Institute was an honest statement, given your treatment of Sheriff Leon Bruno. You are never supporting our county's judges when they're being complimented by your colleagues. You're questioning of the value of the county's deputies and corrections officers. A few weeks ago, you even refused to support an emergency purchase of equipment for our county's 911 and radio system. Do you really believe these radical views that attack our justice system, or is this just a means to an end for you to abolish taxes? Commissioner Young, would you have supported the additional tax levy supported by Prosecutor Colson for the Lake County Crime Lab that was fully supported by previous members of the Board of Commissioners and voted in by the public? Next paragraph. Commissioner Young, as a Columbus legislator, you were a leader of the first nuclear power bailout effort that was the Zen bill that ultimately was transformed into now infamous HB 6. How do you reconcile your actions that led up to the HB 6 scandal with your current obstruction of open and honest discussions regarding addressing Lake County's need for a remodeled or replaced jail? Next paragraph. Commissioner Hamercheck, when Commissioner Young refers to you as the most informed and perhaps hardest working commissioner Lake County has ever had, you should pay attention to the tone and the context of the statement. Like Mark Antony praising Brutus, it is a criticism, not a compliment. Do you understand that spending your time and tax dollars addressing uninformed and perhaps malicious questions from a colleague doesn't represent the public interest? Commissioner Hamercheck, next paragraph. Do you realize that Commissioner Young is performing at a Columbus level of politics, and when he wants to exclude anyone that has participated in the evaluations and recommendations of the jail in its future, this will exclude organized labor, as you have already indicated they've been contributors at keeping the costs controlled? Does the Board of Commissioners see a difference between local, state, and federal taxes? Last paragraph. Commissioner Plechnik, although new to the Board of Commissioners, you've indicated that your thinking is closely aligned with Commissioner Young. Given your obvious conservative beliefs and you're pointing out the radical nature of the Vera Institute and its founder, do you have a position on proceeding with open and honest public discussions regarding the jail and its future? End of public comment. Number one.
Thank you. Yeah, let's just roll into the next.
I hope I can respond to these.
Would you prefer to deal with that right now, or do you want to just get them all out like a fish hook getting popped through the other side and cut off? For those of you who've ever had a fish hook, you got to push it through the other side and cut it off.
Yeah.
Do you want to deal with that now, or do you want a few minutes to think about that? Or
I don't mind pushing through and cutting off.
There you go. Go for it, brother. All right, Jason,
Okay.
stand by.
So, firstly, I don't recall saying in the meeting that I do recall saying in a previous meeting that I did not read the information in reference to the Vera Institute. But I don't believe I ever stated that I didn't read the report about the county jail that I helped commission. I have read that report. My concerns with it Number one, with Vera. I knew nothing about the Vera Institute until our last meeting. And during the meeting, Mr. Lima, who always brings up interesting and challenging issues, mentioned that this group, this national group, was against the type of funding we were discussing for jails, against the tax increases that accompany that in many cases. And I like that idea. I've always been a conservative. I've always strong conservative, probably one of the strongest in Columbus. And I've always stood against tax increases. I don't believe there was a bill that I ever supported in Columbus, in fact, that wasn't from an overall global perspective, a tax reduction. There were some bills that I supported that had tax increases built into them, but the tax reductions far outweighed the tax increases. I wouldn't have supported them otherwise. That's the crux of the issue we're dealing with here, is a tax increase that's going to put already overly burdened Lake County citizens, in some cases, actually put them out of their homes. In other cases, stress them financially to the point where their lifestyles have to be changed dramatically. The Vera Institute, really, what I found out about them puts in a position where I couldn't possibly support them. I am not for the defunding of the police. I've never taken that position. I would never even consider such an absurd position. I don't need to dig any farther into that organization's background and their complete belief system, et cetera, et cetera. That tells me everything I need to know about them. I'm opposed to that organization. So I think that's number one. I'm not sure who that was from. The next one, attacking leaders. Was never my intention, Sheriff Lee and Bruno, it was never my intention to directly attack the sheriff. I'm told I used the term in this meeting that he was biased. Now, to me, biased, and if I did use that term, I'm not surprised. Sometimes I have a tendency to get a little bit dramatic in my descriptions. But, and some people tell me that was an unfortunate use of that term. But what I was pointing out was simply that if you want to talk about funding from a government perspective, the last thing you want to do is go to the director of the group that will be receiving that funding and ask them if they want it or not. Part of their job is to obtain funding. So for them to reject the idea of a $100 million project being built, at least to a certain extent, under their auspices, it's just not a reasonable position to take. We only really have, at this point, in support of the jail, two positions, if you will, from what some of us are calling experts that have spoken and written in favor of the jail. One is a firm that does business in Lake County, an architectural firm. They've helped build buildings recently for Lake County government. I could use the term bias there as well, to turn to them and say, what do you think? Should we build this building? What's the condition of the current building? They make a living nationally building buildings of this sort, the jail. That's what they do. The last thing they want to do generally is look at a government of any sort, particularly one they're accustomed to working with, and saying to that government, no, don't build that building. Don't build that building. That's a waste of money. You don't need a new jail. I mean, it'd be admirable if they would do that. And I'm not suggesting, I guess there is a suggestion in what I'm saying, but I don't mean it to be there. I don't mean to suggest that they're not honest folks, but there's built-in, I'm going to use the word, there's built-in biases. If this is where you make your money, if this is where your life is invested, if this is how your business prospers, i.e. to build jails and other sorts of public buildings, it's going to be very difficult for you to look at a potential client, in fact, a client you already have a good relationship with, and tell that client, no, don't even consider that $100 million building. Don't even consider it. You don't need it. We don't want you to build that building. And we think it's a bad idea. Forget about that. Generally, such an organization will be supportive. Why? Because in that scenario, there is what I would call a built-in bias, a position that makes them favorable to building such buildings. Why? Well, because that's where they live. So, in a sheriff situation, while I value his position a great deal, I have a lot of respect for the sheriff, and the depth of his experience and knowledge is extraordinary. But at the same time, you don't turn to the individual whose group is going to be receiving the benefits of this funding directly and expect them to be able to deliver in every case a totally objective report on whether or not these monies are necessary. It's just not a reasonable position to take. So I would say both of those expert positions that we're drawing our information from as to whether the jail is necessary are at least somewhat tainted, if you will. Not tainted in the sense that there's anything going on in the dark that could be potentially illegal or even immoral. My wife died about just over a year ago. You'd ask me, what do I think of my wife? I'd say she's the greatest lady that ever lived. Now, does that mean that in an objective sense that she was the most intelligent, the wisest, etc.? I have a built-in bias. I can't get away from it. My little business I ran for 30 years. That was a great business. It was fantastic. It changed the lives of thousands of people around the country. I'd say it's one of the best small businesses the world has ever seen. I have a built-in bias. I can't help it. That's who I am. Anyone who gets that close to an issue becomes biased. As great a man as the sheriff is, and he is a great man, he is, in my mind, too close to the issue to be the one to make that call. Not that we don't use his input, not that we don't value his input, but we need third-party sources who are not closely tied to Lake County or to that specific department, the sheriff's department, if you will, in order to give us the expert type of input that we need to make a decision of this sort. And remember, this decision is critical. We're talking $100 million, the largest project of this sort that Lake County has ever seen or considered. Well, maybe we've considered more, I don't know that. But I'm told it's the largest project that we've ever, if we do it, that we've ever entered into. And requires taking money from the people to accomplish the property tax increase. Those are issues too critical to tiptoe around and just parse words. Well, you used the word biased. That's horrible. I would say the scale of this project is so large, and its impact will hit hard in the lives of so many of our citizens that it's more important than the individual the sensitivities of any individual in Lake County. So I think that's number 2. Vera Institute, again, number 3. I do not support the Vera Institute. I never have, and I think I could sit down and talk to Mr. Lima all day, and I still would not be supportive of the Vera Institute. It says here, I refused to support an emergency purchase of equipment for our county's 911 and radio systems. I don't recall, did I vote against such a proposal, the county's 911 and radio systems?
You were ultimately persuaded to vote
I was
for that.
ultimately persuaded. You mean I asked questions during the meeting?
I believe your statement was you were not prepared to do this.
I asked some questions. Is that right?
Yes, you.
And you answered the questions, and I voted yes.
And I believe we also brought Jason in because of his familiarity with the project and others. So yes, you.
I never brought anyone in.
No, we did. I did. I had Mr. Hackman, I believe, was here just to keep it in context.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that was.
Thank you.
I think that the reality is that we should all be allowed to ask questions and explore issues. And I'll even include my humble self in that population of people who should be allowed to ask questions. And simply asking a question and then voting yes on the very issue that you were questioning shows that your questions were answered. And
I'm sorry, did you say that I am questioning?
pardon me?
Did you just say that I am questioning?
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Oh,
I think
move on, no problem. Or move on. I apologize.
I wasn't referring to you there.
Oh, thank you, sir.
Okay. Merely asking, the issue could be obvious, but at the same time, you may want some details fleshed out. So this implies somehow that, this question implies that somehow I'd be against police or whatever, or emergency systems. I don't believe I've ever taken, I may ask questions, but that doesn't mean I'm taking a negative position on any of those issues. Let's see, would you have supported the additional tax levy supported by Prosecutor Colson for the Lake County Crime Lab that was fully supported by previous members of the Board of Commissioners and voted in by the public? I'd have to do the research in the crime lab to answer that question. I wasn't a commissioner at that point in time. As a Columbus Lights, you were the leader in the first nuclear power. It was the Zen Bill ultimately translated into the now infamous House Bill 6. How do you reconcile your actions that led up to the House Bill 6 scandal with your current obstruction of open and honest discussions? I think I was one of the initiators of the open and honest discussions that we've had recently on this board. I've never obstructed any open and honest discussion. On House Bill 6, that legislation was important to Lake County. It protected almost 2,000 direct and indirect jobs, and it eventually morphed into an actual reduction in rates for people when they took away some of the administrative and some of the out-of-state investments. The first Zen bill that we passed, I think that's what this is referring to, back in 1998, probably saved 3 to 5 million, because created a situation where people could purchase their power through suppliers of their choice, and they could shop around and get the lowest rate. So some of the estimates I heard were between $3 and $5 billion in savings to Ohio citizens. So I have no problem reconciling my position against property tax increases and my support for that bill. At the heart of what I do are the citizens of Lake County. It's not a position I might take as a conservative, as a Republican, as one of those, as a white male, or whatever. My job is to be watchful and guard the citizens of Lake County. In the process of doing that, I'm not perfect. Sometimes I may choose the wrong word. In reference to the sheriff, he was offended by the word bias. And I want to apologize for that. I could have chosen a better word in his case. There he is doing the best job he can as our sheriff, and we ask him for his advice, and he gives it, and I use the word biased. Bias has, I think, some negative connotations. I wasn't looking at it that way when I used the word. What I meant was what I explained earlier. There's just a built-in favoring of issues that you're close to. So, and I could have used that word. I stumbled upon the word biased as I was fumbling through this old data processing system between my ears here, and it was not the best choice of words. So at this point, I am opposed to the property tax increase. If we can build the jail without laying a further burden on the people, at this point, I'd certainly be supportive of that. What I'm asking for is a better and expert report from what I would consider, I'll use the term again, an unbiased source. One that isn't currently doing business with Lake County, one that would not profit potentially from the building of such a building. Would include the sheriff's report. I would certainly always take that into consideration. But that can't be our primary source. Again, if you want to talk about the Lake County Board of Commissioners, I will defend the Lake County Board of Commissioners. Why? Because I love what we do, and I respect what we do and the people that are on the board. all three of us, even when we disagree. So I'm close to that issue. You know, these guys are my friends. So this is a great department, the Board of Commissioners. So I will defend that. I'm close to it. In the same way, any department head that won't defend and push for more funding for his group, I wonder about that. I'm sure they're out there. I'm sure it happens. But it's not the norm, and it's not something that people, I don't think, when all the information comes out, and it will over time, I don't think the people would want to support that kind of a perspective. Now, well, do we need more money for the prosecutor's office? Well, let's simply ask the prosecutor, would you like more money? Our prosecutor is a fine man. He's a very fine man, one of the best. But that can't be our only source of information as to whether or not we fund that department. We've got to dig a little bit deeper. So I think that there's the same situation going on here with the jail. So I hope that helps clarify my positions at any rate. And if anybody has any further questions, I like these opportunities to clarify what I stand for and what I believe in. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
I'll just keep the ball rolling, but hopefully quick. Tax dollars are the people's money. At the end of the day, we're talking about the people's money. We're also, as commissioners, talking about the people's interests and how they could be best served. If I could try to encompass my response and wrap it around, the one question, I will take on the face of it a compliment of perhaps the hardest working commissioner, most informed and perhaps the most hardest working commissioner. I'm going to take that as a compliment all day long and just leave it at that.
It was
So
meant to be a compliment.
there you go. God bless you, brother. I will point out, though, that the sheriff, I'm uncomfortable with him being compared to again, looking at the state level, looking at our sheriff as a director. Our sheriff is a separately elected official. He is a subject matter expert in and of his own right. There is no one better qualified to be giving commentary and advice as to how best to proceed with our jail and future projects. He is, and I have to say this, a good man, an honest man, a man of the highest level integrity. So his credentials are impeccable, and his character is also impeccable. We talk about experts and not recommending a new building. I will encourage you to reread the document. There actually is an option in there about reconstruction, what I would call a refit, rather than, some people call it a remodel. That's a fresh coat of paint. A refit is replacing critical systems. That option actually has been put in there, so I would encourage you to go back and revisit that. Mm-hmm. So I would also say that your references to a built-in bias to build a new building are not valid. I do believe that I have to take my colleague very seriously, because my colleague represents a significant segment of Lake County society. So by his questions being asked and answered, the segment of society that he represents, their questions are being asked and answered. So one reason, I'll just pick on Mr. Limer since he's here, I truly enjoy his presentations, the backup information, although a bit lengthy. 76-page reports are a little tough to read sometimes, but I do appreciate the energy, the enthusiasm. So there are views that we as a board may not agree with, but they have to be taken into consideration. The notion of a third-party source, I don't know what that means. Now, I may be thick, but that one I'm going to ask you to do some homework on and get back to us as to what that means. Because I'll leave it at that. I apologize, I'm flipping through this. Local taxes, state taxes, federal taxes. I would say that people's money on a local level, we have the greatest control. People can knock on our door and say, hey, good idea, bad idea, or could you tell me more about this, or anything in between. State level, Ron, you were a legislator, you understand sometimes money goes down to the state and it may or may not come back to the local level. Case in point, local government funds. Those have been declining for a very long time. And federal taxes, it's tough to see that come back. That's a battle in and of itself. And with every level of government, the people's control of the people's money is diminished. So that I'll just close with that. That those are the differences that I see as far as taxes from local, state, and federal. And I think that's hit the points. Commissioner Plechnik, did you want to weigh in?
Well, Mr. President, I was only asked one question. Although new, what is my position on open and honest public discussions regarding the jail and its future or anything else? I think we, by law, need to have open and honest discussions. This is the appropriate place to have this debate. This is where members of the public come forward to ask their questions, either in person or virtually, and where their representatives, where the Board of Commissioners has the opportunity to engage. Because we're not allowed to have a private discussion where we, in a friendly, gentlemanly way, work things out and then all come up to the dais and say yes, yes, yes. We have to have, by law, this debate and discussion here, and I welcome it. My starting point is always a level of gratitude that now all three commissioners are sitting here together. I know a lot of people have been praying a long time for Commissioner Young's recuperation and to be sitting with us. And my honor was not complete until he took his seat next to us. So I'm really grateful to have Commissioner Young and President Hamercheck as mentors, because they do represent Lake County and they represent it well. I would only add that as a councilman, I did look first to my police and fire chiefs to see the need of our safety forces. And as a commissioner, I look first to our sheriff. And I look even more strongly in this case and context because the sheriff isn't someone we appoint. The sheriff is in his own right elected. And if he takes a ridiculous or absurd position just because it benefits his department, that I want the Taj Mahal with the tallest tower and 30 floors for a jail just because, he's accountable to all the residents of Lake County just the same as anyone sitting at this dais for his position. So I actually think he is the least biased law enforcement official in the county because he's only there because the voters have chosen him. That doesn't mean he doesn't have his own perspective. And I certainly take Commissioner Young's point critically that every one of us comes to the table with our own perspective, which could be labeled in a more negative way as a bias, but we certainly come with our own perspective. But I think that elected officials are uniquely accountable because if we do not follow the will of the people, we're not here very long. And so I look to our sheriff first and foremost. I also think he brings a particularly valuable perspective because his first job was managing and administering the jail. And so when the person who managed the jail for many, many, many years says, I've been here from the beginning to today, I've seen the decline, and the best alternative, because every alternative costs money, whether it's repairing the jail, building 3 smaller jails, building 1 new jail, none of these are free alternatives. They're all going to cost in the tens of millions of dollars. And until we have formal estimates, we're using back pocket math on exactly how expensive each of those alternatives are. But there is no free alternative. When the sheriff who is elected, who is accountable to the people, and who spent his career managing that facility says, I believe that the most cost-effective, efficient, safe alternative is 1 new jail rather than trying to rebuild this one or building 3 or 4 jails, I give a lot of gravity and weight to that. I don't, however, simply hand off the responsibility. I recognize that as a commissioner, as one of three, I have to ultimately vote on what alternative is chosen, and I don't pretend that I can hand that responsibility or delegate it to the sheriff or anyone else. But if I have to look to what opinion is most important to me, the person who ran that jail for decades and is elected to give recommendations on law enforcement, I have to give first consideration to that opinion. But I will say that Commissioner President Hamercheck said it best: we can't conflate two different issues. Do we need a jail? Yes or no? Versus how do we pay for it? Those are two completely separate issues. And by law, the commissioners are required to provide a facility to handle those folks that have violated their probation 4, 5, 6 times, that are violent offenders, that are dangerous. No one in this audience wants to live next to a convicted murderer or somebody who's on trial for rape when the judges of Lake County and the prosecutor's office deem them to be a threat to society at this point in time. No one would say, "Commissioners, good job. I've got a murderer living next door because you didn't build a jail," in violation of state law. The lawsuits and nonsense that would follow are, I'm laughing a little bit because it's impossible. We would never go down that road, but we have this responsibility. And so I want to make sure that we keep separate these two issues, because I'll quote President and Commissioner Hamercheck again: I have no appetite for a new tax. I don't hear anyone on this Board of Commissioners saying that we want to do that. What I hear instead is, do we need a jail and how do we pay for it? And I want to make sure we keep those two questions separate. And I believe from the report that the commissioners commissioned before I joined this board, we do need a new jail. From our sheriff, I believe we do need a new jail. And I think that it was very helpful when Sheriff Liam Bruno and his deputies took me through the jail from floor 1 to the top, from the roof to the basement, to actually see for myself, here are the maintenance issues, here are the costs, here's what repairs are going to be necessary if we don't replace the building over the next 4 or 5 year period. Here are the expenses that would be engendered in that. I would encourage anyone who has real questions as to the need for a new jail to take on that same opportunity, to march through the jail, to see for yourself. I actually immediately, like I always do, I took my phone and I started taking pictures, and the sheriff and the president said, whoa, this is a secure facility. You can't necessarily post all of these. I said, but the public needs to see that the roof is leaking because they own this roof. Well, they might find a way to break into the roof. I think we need to work a little bit harder to see what pictures we can release to the public, so that as opposed to taking anyone's opinion on faith, you can see for yourself the damage that is occurring on a daily basis to the facility. As that water pours down from the top to the bottom, there are issues with plumbing, there are issues with paint, there are issues with dampness and sanitary issues, and the reality is we are constantly repairing that damage, and that is not free. So the issue is not, do we pay nothing and just use this jail for free going forward? The issue is, do we have the expense of maintaining this jail, which is going up exponentially? Do we build multiple jails, or do we build one jail? That's really our three principal alternatives. And that's something we need to talk about. But the need for a jail and which of those alternatives is superior is separate from the issue of how do we pay for it. And I think that we should do our best to decide issue number 1, do we need a new jail or not, and which of those alternatives is preferable, and then you move on to issue number 2, because we have to pay for this jail somehow. And I'd rather spend our time productively as opposed to conflating the two issues. I believe we need a new jail. I believe the most cost-effective alternative is not to build an army of new prisons. I think we need to have one facility, fiscally responsible, in line with the sheriff's position. And I think that building a new one is cheaper than rebuilding the old one when you look at the cost per year. Because my goal is to spend as little money as possible. When I look at the per year cost of rebuilding a jail, we could easily spend $8 million a year just maintaining this jail. Building a new jail, even with the estimates we're seeing, is more along the lines of $3 to $6 million cost a year. Rebuilding is more expensive than building one new jail, and building one new jail is cheaper than building 3 or 4. So I think step one, what is our most fiscally responsible alternative given state law requires that we do imprison folks who have run afoul of the justice system? I think the cheapest, most fiscally responsible alternative is a jail. That is my position. I agree with Sheriff Liam Bruno, and I do view him not only as an expert, but as the person I can most trust in that department, because he is not just a department head. He's not just an employee. He is elected by the people, and he's just as accountable as I am for the statements that he makes to the public. One could argue he's even more accountable because he will be most publicly associated with rebuilding, with building a new, with building multiple new jails. Whatever alternative, the sheriff will be highly involved. And since she's left the room, I can safely say this. I think that Jan Claire is a perfect example of how even our employed department heads have not asked for more money in this county than they've needed. The commissioners have stood ready to provide funding for new voting machines many, many years in the past and in the present. And Jan Claire, as our deputy director, in the past as our director, has said, no, we can wait. We can wait. We can use these machines a little bit longer. I believe that the first set of machines she used as director lasted something on the order of 50 years. I'm looking at our director, Ross McDonald. Is that right? The lever machines were
Just
in
to be
that
clear,
ballpark?
she wasn't here 50 years ago now. You're lucky she's out in the room right now at the moment.
So if we use the logic that every department head will just ask for unlimited money, then why didn't Director Jan Claire, Deputy Director Jan Claire, demand new machines 30 years ago? It's because she worked hard to husband the public's resources. And I think that is a place where Lake County has done better than many counties, because I don't think that Commissioner Young is wrong, that a lot of public employees will ask for whatever they can get and take whatever they can get. I don't think that's true of Lake County. As I've done the tour of our departments, both elected and non-elected public servants, I've seen a real hard work to husband the county's resources. I see our clerk of court saying, I want to make money in this office. I want to return money to the public. I see our Lake County recorder having already done that year after year after year, Becky Lynch. So it would be very easy to say that every public employee, every public official just wants to take as much as they can. I really see the opposite here in Lake County. I'm not saying I trust or take everything on faith, but I think that the culture we have in Lake County is to spend as little as necessary to really husband the public dollar, and that's a culture that I want to build on. And by the way, I want to say too, I'm really excited by the engagement that we've started to have at these meetings as we've been reopening and we've encouraged the public to join. So while I may not always agree with Mr. Lima, I have to say that he has been incredibly cordial, especially with those with whom he's disagreed. And that's a wonderful thing, but it's even more wonderful that you're here because so many people have an opinion and don't share it. And I think that we won't have an open and honest discussion without you. But I want to introduce you, Mr. Lima, to the original members of the public, the people who have been holding Lake County officials accountable since before Jan Claire. The public, Linda Fulton and Cheryl Oda, they are quite literally known as the public because they have been going to public portions at county and city meetings across Lake, I think since Lake County was founded. And I am really honored and grateful that that Linda Fulton and Cheryl Oda from Willoughby Hills are here with us today. I'm surprised they didn't have any public comment, but there'll be a second public portion because we have not one but two. So don't be shy. And I'll be giving them a tour of the commissioners' chambers about 6 hours from now when the meeting's over. But this is what it's all about, folks. I hope that we have people watching at home. I hope that you're excited to be engaged because, as Commissioner Young said, this is probably the biggest capital project that Lake County's ever considered. I believe it's absolutely necessary, and I think we have a great deal of work to do as commissioners to pay for it in the way that least impacts the public, their taxes, and the services we provide them. But this is not our money. Specifically, it is everyone's money. It is the people's money, as Commissioner Young said. And so all of us need to be part of this discussion. So that's why I'm grateful that Mr. Lima, that Ms. Fulton, that Ms. Oda and that we are all here to engage in that discussion. Thank you.
I'd like to follow up on that.
Oh,
just for a
please,
minute.
Commissioner Young.
Something. Firstly, you had mentioned that you don't know what a unbiased source might be to tell us about the jail. And I would just say that we may have such a source in Columbus, the Department of Corrections. I believe, who handles the,
I could look into that, Commissioner. Yeah, I believe the Department of DRC, Department of Rehabilitation, they do jail assessments.
right.
I don't know if it's annually or biannually. I could check with the sheriff on that, but
I'd like to see that. And also, we should talk to them, I think, about coming up and doing an analysis in our situation, since this has really come to a head, and we're seriously considering spending $100 million. I think we could bring them up to do a more detailed analysis. I know they found our jail not to meet all the criteria, but at the same time, as you mentioned, that's true of jails throughout the state.
true.
But I'd like to see how we did on a comparative basis
I can.
with other jails throughout the state, number one. Number two, what needs correcting? And number three, any recommendations they might have as to building a new or rehabbing the current facility. But in reference to a third-party source, I would say that anyone, any true expert who's not directly involved with Lake County government and doing work for Lake County government in Lake County, and perhaps doesn't have an expectation for future work in Lake County. And I believe there are such experts out there who do analysis of architectural projects, such as we're describing, building projects, that there are experts who can do true analysis. And I think that's something we should look into in more depth. In reference to the sheriff's opinion, as I said earlier, I think that's an important consideration, extremely important. But as you said as well, Commissioner Pleshnik, you don't want to just hand the keys of the kingdom over to someone who has been involved in these discussions, i.e. the jail, for all these years and is immersed in a group of true believers, if you will. I think while his position needs to be considered and honored and taken very seriously, at the same time, we need to dig a little bit deeper than someone who is so close to the issue. But that doesn't negate at all his input. It's still important. You can balance 2 or 3 things at once. Knowing you can balance probably 30 things at once. So while his opinion is to be valued and taken very seriously, I think we need true, and I love your word, perspective. That's the word that I should have used before, rather than biased. We need someone with a pristine sort of 50,000-foot removed view of Lake County and its needs. Someone that can just look at our situation objectively and give us that expert opinion. $100 million project, taking the people's money. I think it's worth spending some extra dollars before we make the final call.
That last comment, you did kind of inspire me to circle back on this.
Sure.
There was a statement made here about, let's see, I'll try to, evaluations and recommendations of the jail and its future. This will exclude organized labor, as you've already indicated. They've been contributors at keeping the costs controlled. Under no circumstances will I accept any situation where a qualified contractor, labor organization, anybody who is able to save us $1 is going to be penalized and not allowed to participate in a project if we proceed with a project. I believe there's a reference back. We had International Masonry Institute. They came in, helped us with the outer skin, the shell of the building, the rain screen, if you will. There were serious issues that resulted in that being fixed, making it safe so the exterior of the building didn't fall off, causing injury or worse. They have been very helpful in giving us suggestions and design opportunities to, again, save money. There are other trade organizations that have been very helpful in making suggestions. I would not want to eliminate local contractors, and I'm certainly not in favor of throwing open the door to out-of-state, dare I use the word, carpetbaggers who come in and have no interest in Lake County, take the money and run, and then we wind up with another building like the one that we're dealing with today. So I'm very uncomfortable with the notion that anybody who could be a participant in the future being restricted. But enough said on that. I think we beat this horse pretty hard.
Oh, wait a minute. If you're implying that I would want restrictions, is that somehow...
Oh, I'm not implying it. I'm coming right out and saying it.
Would be against labor. There's no way that I would support such restrictions.
I'm glad to hear you say that. Thank you for...
But I would want to see any qualified bidder at least have the opportunity to bid. And qualified, we'd have to set criteria for that.
And we have a responsible contracting policy that's been established and has been adhered to.
Right.
My concern is statements, words to the effect of, if you're helping now, you can't profit in the future. I have a serious problem with that.
I'm talking about the evaluation, not about the building, not about the actual building. That's handled through the bidding process, John.
But
I was talking about the report that we need from someone who's not going to profit directly from, you can't have someone who's going to profit directly from the building of a building do their report as to whether we need the building or not. Obviously, there's their perspective is tainted, to use Commissioner Plesnick's words. But you're right. We've talked about this a long time here.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, so there's other 67 emails?
Yeah, we have...
That's a reference to our last meeting, ladies and gentlemen.
We have
for
two
those
more
of you.
public comments. Without objection, I'll proceed with number 2.
Thank you, sir.
Submitted this morning by Kathy Dean, 344 Bank Street, Painesville, Ohio, May 6, 2021, to the Commission of Lake County. I've been a resident of Painesville for 48 years. I have heard of plans to build a new jail, but didn't realize until recently that it would cost the citizens $100 million. In my opinion, this huge amount of money would be much better spent remodeling the current jail, looking at the possibility of reopening and use of the low-security jail in Painesville Township, and spending the extra money on programs to help the people who, for one reason or another, drug abuse or abuse, homelessness, jobless, etc. Also, could the court system make changes to expedite trials? Could we offer other options to cash-only bail? Could we use electronic monitoring? Could we use Geauga County jail space if needed? I would much rather see the money spent differently. Wouldn't this be a more positive approach? Perhaps the Lake County Commissions could create more jobs in Lake County and find real solutions to our high incarcerations. End of public comment.
Mr. President,
Sir.
if I could take this one. Number one, our Lake County judges, and I'm looking to our Assistant Prosecutor Dave Hackman to shake his head if I'm saying something wrong, but our Lake County judges have already worked as hard as possible to expedite trials, to make sure that we are only assigning jail and prison sentences to the most difficult and dangerous offenders, that we have worked very hard to reduce incarceration wherever possible because we recognize that it's a grave cost, not just to the individual, but to everyone. Because, as we've discussed today, it's the taxpayer who pays for the jail, for the meals, for the guards. That's all on our tab. So incarceration is the last option. I think that's been the approach that our county prosecutor, Chuck Colson, and our judges have all taken together. Would you agree?
Yes, Commissioner, and also with regard to the laws and it's changing, there's a tendency to not put people in prison and to keep them in the local facilities. So I would agree with that.
And I'd also like to add, with respect to Geauga County jail space, our sheriff actually let me know yesterday. I believe he also let President Hamercheck know, I'm not sure who else he shared it with, that Geauga County Jail just signed an agreement with the federal marshals to take on about 100 additional prisoners to their facility, which probably will use up most of their extra space. But relevant to our consideration, it's about a $4 million a year contract. And it indicates that there is right now pretty significant demand for extra jail space. So if and to the extent that we ever have an extra bed, which is rare these days because our facility has been close to capacity and at capacity, as the sheriff explained at our last meeting, we don't really have the opportunity to take advantage of that. The old jail, as poorly built as it was largely paid for with renting bed space to the marshals and other facilities. We don't really have that opportunity with smaller counties like Geauga because our needs are much larger than theirs. Our needs are bigger than the entire Geauga County Jail. But right now, the price for rented beds are pretty high because the federal marshals are going to every jail they can find and buying up beds. So on the one hand, Geauga County Jail isn't an option. Even if we could rent, quote unquote, every bed from them, that wouldn't be big enough for our needs. Number two, there is no beds to rent. They've already rented them. But number three, the good news, which we're not counting on because you never know what the demand will be 1, 2, 3 years down the road, but what we're hopeful of is that just as we've seen in the past, if we have a well-built facility and if we're able to reduce our population, we generally can rent those beds and take an added revenue that we can put back towards the cost of the jail. So no one is promising that the jail will pay for itself. We're acting and we're budgeting as though there won't be a dime from that. I think that's the responsible approach. But in reality, if you talk to the sheriff and you look at the experience that other counties are having, if we had 100 extra beds, right now we would be renting them. And we would be making a considerable amount of revenue towards the county's needs if we had that space. Will that demand be there in 2 or 3 years? I don't have a crystal ball, and so we're not budgeting for it. But given that we were asked about Geauga in particular, I think it's important to note that they're renting their extra bed space to the federal marshals at a considerable profit.
Thank you, sir. Jason, Commissioner Young? We good?
I'm glad you mentioned that, Commissioner Pleshnik, that we're not budgeting for it. And even the sheriff himself mentioned in one of our previous meetings when that was brought up that you can't budget for it because it's so unpredictable. It changes. People even have signed agreements that they'll need so many X number of beds for X number of years, only to back out of those agreements a year or two into the whole process. So you bring up a great point, but it's not something we can really budget for or have expectations for. But it could be worthwhile in the future.
And if I could just add briefly, the sentiments expressed in this email is similar to those of Mr. Lima. This has been an ongoing process, and these are factors that are in fact being brought into the calculation of determining need, what a facility would look like, and then what the means to pay for that would be. So thank you. Jason, if you want to move on to the next one, please.
Yeah, public comment number 3, submitted by Mary Ellen Strews, Kirtland, Ohio, yesterday afternoon. Dear President Hamercheck, Commissioners Young and Plechnik, please seriously consider my taxpayer and voter opinion on the topic of utilizing $100 million for building a new jail facility in Lake County. I vehemently opposed to the proposal to build a new jail. My reason encompassed the following. Number 1, the current inmate population is below the capacity for which the jail was built. Monies could be more wisely spent on renovation. inmate population could be more humanely be affected by decreasing incarceration for nonviolent crimes. In this COVID-19 environment, the safety of all staff and inmates still unproven guilty of nonviolent crimes should be of legal and humane priority. Fifth bullet point, social justice movements have brought to the attention of the taxpayers the inordinately large populations of Americans incarcerated, second only to our arch autocratic enemy, Russia. This is a harbinging of the need to examine and reform the institution. Number 6, monies to provide training and continuing education for all officers in the community would improve the public trust and, most importantly, improve the safety of the officers and protect the community from legal ramifications. Final bullet point, little discussion of the needs of the juvenile detainees has been forthcoming. This is an area of great need, of great concern, and of the greatest potential for improvement of the services to the youth in our community. Please investigate this area as the greatest area for permanent improvement in the lives of all community members. I request that you share and discuss this letter and ideas with each other. I apologize for being unable to attend the meeting May 6, 2021. I will be sharing with many friends the resolution of this proposal. Thank you for your attention to this very important matter affecting the total community and for the many other issues affecting the community. Your work does not go unnoticed or unappreciated. End of public comment.
And if I could just echo what I said earlier, that these sentiments are in fact being addressed. Obviously, there's no way we can do a complete core dump of everything that goes on behind the scenes, but this is the best venue in which an open, honest conversation can take place, and you can get a sense of what factors are being considered. And I do encourage, let us know if there's something you feel that needs to be looked at. So, Commissioner Young?
Thank
Yes,
you.
please.
I'd like to respond to that one. We keep hearing about the current inmate population being less than what the jail was originally designed for. And Mr. Lima brought up some really interesting data today. So I think what I'd like to do is explore that data with you, Jason, and in more detail, and with Mr. Lima as well. And then possibly bring the sheriff in to that discussion. And I'd like to hear his perspective on it as well. So, because that data seems to indicate something other than the data we've been looking at from other sources. So there seems to be some conflict here as far as the numbers. I think it's something that's worth exploring.
Yeah, I'm happy to set up. I think it's critically important that this is the sheriff's data. And the data in the said reports from previous comments comes from the sheriff's team and Captain Brooks and so on. But I'm happy to set something up and review that in detail.
Yeah, let's do that. Maybe even bring Mr. Lime into that discussion.
And I would be remiss if I did not remind my colleagues and our administrator that the sheriff has already commented on this subject, in that COVID-19 has resulted in less criminal activity in Lake County, therefore less people are going to jail. I believe our prosecutor's office is prosecuting less crimes because less crimes are being committed. The sheriff has already opined on this subject. If you wish to have him come back and repeat himself, I will entertain that, but we are starting to become repetitive. I would like to move on at this time and begin, unless there are other reports.
Well, we could look, John.
I would like to
yours is
move
not the
on.
only,
As
decision.
president and chair of this meeting, we are moving on.
Well, go right ahead.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Jason. Okay, Madam Clerk, resolutions.
In the engineer's office, resolution to advertise for bids for the Morley, Prouty, and Pinehill Roads Traffic Signal Upgrade Project in Concord Township, Ohio, LCE project number 2019-023, bid opening May 26, 2021.
Move to approve.
Second.
And discussion. Engineer, you want to give us a little bit of background on that one? Oh, you want to make sure your microphone's on, sir? You know the new guy. Come on.
Thank you.
New to that chair, not new in the office.
Thank you, Commissioner. The signal was designed and built in 1992. It's over almost 30 years old. It needs to be upgraded to the new technology, and we got an OPWC grant to help for part of the construction cost, and we're ready to bid on the project. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Further discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
In the Utilities Office, resolution transferring cash from Lake County Department of Utilities Water Operating Fund to Project Funds 354W, Victor and Sylvia Drive, waterline replacement, and 360W Hardy Road and Oakwood waterline replacement, decreasing appropriations and transferring cash from Project 374W to the Water Operating Fund.
Move to approve.
I'll second that. Discussion. Randy, you want to give us a little bit of background there, please?
Sure, these are a couple of projects that we did a few years ago, and this transfer of money is to pay down the debt from those projects.
Very good. Further discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution increasing appropriations and transferring cash within Lake County Department of Utilities Sewer Operating Fund and Project Fund 596, Kirtland Old Town Sanitary Sewer Improvement Project 445S.
Move to approve.
Second.
And discussion. Again, Randy, a little background, please.
Sure, this area in the city of Kirtland is under orders from Ohio EPA to install sanitary sewers. And this resolution is to transfer money into the design, appropriate design fees to hire an engineer, C.W. Courtney, is proposed to design those improvements.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Further discussion?
Mr. President,
Sir.
I just say, while this is mandated by the Ohio EPA, I want to note that this is a great sacrifice for the folks in Kirtland. When I first moved to Willoughby Hills, my neighborhood was put on the sewer system, and we recognize the difficulty, and our county department, our utilities are doing the best we can to be a good partner and help with a tough situation, because this is not happy news for any homeowner.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution approving plans, specifications, and estimates of cost in the amount of $119,955 for a water line for Chagrin Mill subdivision in the city of Willoughby, job number 21-08.
Move to approve.
Second.
And discussion. Randy, a little background?
This is just a new subdivision that's proposed in Willoughby. We reviewed the plans, and this is approval is so they can move forward with the construction.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Further discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution accepting a 3-year maintenance bond in the amount of $5,941.54 for sanitary sewers and $9,877.93 for water lines for Hidden Village Phase 2 subdivision in Perry Village, job numbers 20-03 and 20-04.
Move to approve.
Second.
And discussion? Again, Randy, a little background?
Sure, this is a subdivision in Perry Village that is complete and approved, and this accepts a maintenance bond, so if there's any deficiencies, they can be remedied.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Further discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
In the Commissioner's Office, resolution authorizing execution of an agreement between the Lake County Board of Commissioners on behalf of the Lake County Sheriff's Central Communications Department and the Lake Metro Parks for central dispatch and communication services.
Move to approve.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion. Jason, did you want to give a little background on that? Or do you want me to just, oh, you got it? Okay.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is a resolution put forth by the Sheriff's Office and Central Dispatch, a 3-year contract with the Lake Metro Parks from January 1 of 22 to December 31st of 24 to provide their dispatch services. So, thank you.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Further discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution approving the dedication plat for a portion of Cryo Road and Capitol Parkway in Concord Township.
Move to approve.
Second.
And discussion? Dave Verdacci, did you want to, as we like to say, give a little background here?
Good morning, Commissioners. Crowell Road reconfiguration was done over the past 4 years or so. Concord Township had purchased the property to build and relocated Crowell Road and do the new cross connection across 44. This is the final step in the project. We are going to change it from being fee simple lots to becoming a road, which will be allowed for travel and for future extension of utilities. And then there's also resolution number 8, which is, I'll just talk about that now.
Yes, please. Thank you.
There's a section of road currently with a street sign of Old Cryle Road. That's just a street sign, and per the county records, it's still being recognized as Cryle Road. So the commissioners need to alter the center line by changing the name of that center line from Cryle Road to Old Cryle Road as part of the process of reconfiguring these roads.
So purely ministerial function, just
Yes.
done. Very good. Thank you. Any questions or further discussion? Dave, thank you. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik,
Yes.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution to rename a portion of Cryle Road located in Concord Township to Old Cryle Road.
Move to approve.
Second.
And discussion for the record, the information was provided at the previous agenda item. Anything else? Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik,
Yes.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution revising the Lake County Board of Commissioners regular meeting schedule.
Move to approve.
Second.
Hey, teamwork. Discussion? None.
Turns.
Yeah, there you go. Take turns. There you go. Shows how well we work together. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik,
Yes.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution authorizing execution of a contract between Election Systems and Software LLC and the Lake County Board of Commissioners on behalf of the Lake County Board of Elections for voting machine equipment certified for use in the state of Ohio in the amount of $581,182.37.
Move to approve.
Second.
And discussion. Now that we are to item number 10, our folks from Board of Elections, for those of you who may be trying to follow remotely, we did change the wording of the title of this agenda item. That was to reflect compliance with election standards and conformities. But Jan, Ross, if you want to dive in.
Sure. Thank you for allowing us to be here today. I wanted first to respond to the data board question that was brought up by two of my fellow members on the data board. I've been a member of the data board for almost 30 years, and your question regarding voting equipment was not the first question to be asked of the data board with respect to voting equipment. I asked the same question of the Secretary of State and our prosecutor when we purchased the Sequoia equipment, and I was informed it is not part of the data board's approval. And when we purchased the ES&S equipment back in 2005, once again, I raised the same question, so it is not the role of the data board to approve the use of voting equipment or its components in any county in the state of Ohio. So does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you. Well, Prosecutor Hackman answered the question. With the statute.
You're off microphone, and for the record,
Jan, you asked the question, so we asked it. We didn't know you asked it too, just so you know.
Right, okay. So their response is they're saying is they didn't know I had asked that question previously, so you're accepting the answer I'm giving you. And are there any other questions about the data board and its role?
and just to try to get closure on the conversation that Mr. Heckman and I were having, this is looked at as a system.
That's exactly what I said. It's a voting system. And I wish I would have been at the data board meeting. I was not present at that meeting because I was out of town, but I gladly clarify that so that we're all understanding. And I see nods.
May I say,
If you'd have to come on microphone, and I want to keep this as tight as possible,
And
please.
Ross, please.
Thank you, ma'am.
You're correct, you weren't there, Ross was. And what, last month, when we had our meeting, I made the question, and Ross said, yeah, probably they would need to be going through the data board, just because it seemed like logic, so we didn't know all this.
That's okay.
I don't think that I actually said that, respectfully, Ms. Lynch. I did ask, I said, you know, we are looking to purchase new voting machines, and we are proposing that to the county commissioners. And I asked the chair of the data board, Auditor Galloway, whether or not he thought that that approval should go through data board. He said that he would look into it. Shortly after that meeting, we received an email from Nick Falcone, who is the director of the IT department, who indicated that that was not necessary. So I did not think that it should go to the data board. I simply asked the question.
So, just real quick, and I know we're going to get into this, all of the equipment that is listed, and again, this is just for the benefit of those who want to check our work, which is encouraged and much appreciated. Everything on the sales order is going to be covered by the United States Election Assistance Commission Certificate of Conformance, and right now the one that is relevant to what we're talking about is the ES&S EVS 6.1.1.0. Everything that we're purchasing will be compliant with this.
That is correct, Commissioner, and also compliant with the Ohio Board of Voting Machine Examiners. That is chaired up by Secretary of State LaRose. There was a question presented by Mr. Massey, member of the media. He asked about network connectivity and whether or not, I believe, was it a good idea to have that explored by an outside party, perhaps the county IT department. And I want to start out by saying that our county IT department is fantastic. They are the partner for the Board of Elections and cybersecurity, and they support us on election night. With that said, Nick Falcone, the county IT director, would probably tell you that they are not qualified to perform any sort of testing on voting machines. But I have good news for you. The EAC is qualified to perform testing on voting machines, and they have labs that do all sorts of testing, such as penetration testing, network connectivity, whether or not it can be connected to the internet. And in that certificate of conformance, which is a part of the official record, there's a section there that speaks to network connectivity, wireless connectivity, and you'll see that the answers to that are all no's. With regard to the, I believe it's called the Everest project that was brought up by the clerk of courts, I was not aware of that report, and I don't know when it was issued. Do you happen to know the answer to that?
2007, I believe.
2007, okay. So that report was issued in 2007. What I can say is that since that time, we have conducted audits and recounts of audits of every state or federal year, and recounts when necessary, and we have never seen an election result change.
And I'd like to respond to that. I was aware of that. That was one of my 6 Secretary of States I've served, and that report at that time is what gave direction, as Ross was just saying, to the future that we now conduct these audits and everything else, which in Lake County we have never had one reversed. I appreciate the research that's going in on everyone's part. It's important that when you come forth, that you come forth with knowledge and proven fact. That was an older report that generated what we now do in our world of elections this state.
And I didn't have time to read the entire report, but it talked about a lot of if scenarios, if a person unplugged this, or if a person improperly calibrated the touch screen. Well, I think, if we left our homes in the morning and left the doors wide open, we would consider our homes vulnerable. But we do things to mitigate vulnerability, like locking our doors. So our poll workers go through all sorts of training to make sure that they are in possession of those sensitive materials. And that's something that we would continue to do. And I'm proud to say that this new equipment that we're presenting, I believe, is much less vulnerable than the former equipment because we have fewer tabulators. Right now we have a footprint of close to 800 tabulators. We are recommending only 131 tabulators at this time. So with that said, I'd be happy to answer any follow-up questions from the commissioners or the public.
And considering we get like one shot to get this right, I just want to memorialize a few things. As part of the certificate of conformance, as part of that, when it gets into the scope of certification, there is a specified election systems and software EVS 6.1.1.0 system configuration. It is completely laid out exactly how it has been tested and how it should be used in the field. So all of that is, and this is a public record which I believe could be obtained off the Secretary of State's website if anybody wanted to review it, lay eyes on it.
Yeah, I'm not sure of its location, but I certainly agree with you that it is a public record of which we hold.
And going to the Frank LaRose, Ohio Secretary of State, the testing through their office is also building upon the work of the United States Election Assistance Commission. So they are all working hand in glove, not in competition with each other.
That's correct. And the State Board of Voting Machine Examiners, by default, would never certify anything in the state of Ohio that was not certified at the national level.
And again, just making sure we're crossing all the T's and dotting all the I's. In the sales order, which is in front of us now, but that was, I'll call it a dated, we'll call it a draft document. That does reflect some older hardware versions, some older firmware versions, some, we'll say, mismatches with the certificate of conformity, but the vendor has indicated they are updating basically their sales records, which is where those items were generated from. Those are not, sales records are not necessarily reflective of what has been submitted for certification. Now, I believe in our contractual agreement with the company, they will be in full conformity with this certification. Nothing in this sales order is not addressed in this certificate of conformance. Again, restating for the record, ES&S EVS 6.1.1.0. There's a reason why we're beating this thing to death, so we want to make sure everybody's got this covered.
Yes, sir. Everything you stated is accurate.
And looking to legal, we updated the title of this to reflect that the expectation is we will be receiving product which is in full conformity.
Correct. And certification is specifically stated in the statute.
So everything that's going to come through on that sales order is addressed by the federal government, the state government, and is not under the jurisdiction of the data board. We're good. I'm just trying to check off every what if.
Correct.
Okay, Ross, I think I've hit all the high points here. Gentlemen, thoughts? Commissioner Young, Commissioner Fleshnick?
I think you've covered it well.
Mr. President?
Sir. Thank you.
First question. I had some residents express concern about whether these machines are Election Assistance Commission, are federally certified, and they've shown me articles where other models of machine have not been certified. My understanding is that some of this company's machines are certified, some are not, and that the ones we're looking at are, because I'm seeing a certificate in President Hamercheck's hands. So I want to pose the question of, have we confirmed that this particular election system is in fact certified by EAC and so is state eligible?
Yes, we have confirmed that at this point, and further confirmed it with the State Board of Voting Machine Examiners. So I'm not sure what was pointed out as far as ES&S having uncertified equipment. Perhaps they meant, you know, there's equipment out there that's certified in other states that is not certified in the state of Ohio. But again, you know, they have to be nationally certified, and then it gets to the state level and whatever practices they have state by state. But yes, just to restate it, any proposal that we've made is only for hardware and software that is certified at the national and state level.
And to follow up, during your presentation at our last meeting, and I want to thank both Director McDonald and Deputy Director Clare for walking us through, along with the Chairman of the Board of Elections, Dale Fellows, how these machines operate. I said three things. We need to have a machine, we need to have a system that produces a paper ballot, is made in America, and does not in any way connect to the internet. Are all those things true of this voting system?
Yes, it is. And that is all true. And with regard, Jan, yeah? With regard to the internet connectivity piece, we can show you on the certificate of conformance exactly where that section is covered. Again, these go through a whole host of testing through laboratories that have the tools and equipment to do these tests. And again, I think we have a fantastic county IT department, but kindly, I don't believe that they would be qualified to do the level of testing that this goes through at the national level.
And the reason why I say paper ballot first and foremost is, if anyone's self-interested in making sure there's a free and fair election, it would be someone running for office next year. And I deeply care, both as a resident and as somebody who stands to account for the voters, that I know that when my vote is cast, when anyone's vote is cast in Lake County, we have assurance that it's one vote, one person. Having a paper ballot to me is the ultimate proof of my vote. And the only way that paper ballot is meaningful is if I get to see it for myself. And so I was really grateful when your office took the time to show how what we really have is not a computer system or something connected to the internet where these numbers are being tallied. We have a printer and we have a box that the votes are put in. And under any system, we're going to have a box, a secure box that we put the votes in. The tabulator, which counts those votes, is a convenience. And it's a separate issue as to how many of those need to be hand counted to ensure the result. I've had some residents come to me with the proposal that all votes should be hand counted. That would be a rather labor-intensive process, but that's not the question we're resolving today. Absentee ballots are counted electronically, are tabulated electronically, and those are all paper ballots today. What we're talking about now is what election system would be best, not whether every vote should be hand counted or not. A decision, I think, that goes to our governor and our General Assembly, and there are important arguments to be made there. But what we have to decide here and now is whether these are the best voting systems for Lake County. Some of those ballots will be hand recounted depending on how close races are.
And I think it's important that everyone understands that we do an audit and we do a hand count of the paper ballots or the votes that were cast after every election now. So, as we heard what came out of an Everest report from years ago, we also now have even more stringent support to show that what we are choosing and the equipment we're choosing has been years of research on our part within the Board of Elections, a company that we have had for our voting equipment for many years that has been reliable. So we don't come before you just saying this is what we like. We had public input, we have done our research, we have done our due diligence, we have relied on the elections commissions and those that are more qualified to know whether or not the innards of that meet the specifications. So not Ross, not myself, not Nick Falcone, not your knowledge as a former legislator and now commissioner could sit down and go through that and say, I approve. You rely at some point in time on those that are trained with the expertise that come before you and say, this is the recommendation. And as I have stood before you in the past, I stand before you with Ross at my side today saying, we recommend, we support, we respect your funding and we look forward to having our voters enjoy this form of voting in the future.
I'd like to follow up with just a few quick questions. Is it, number one, is it true that the Board of Elections voted unanimously to recommend these machines?
That's correct, Commissioner Pleshnik.
Number two, is it true that we're not allowed to implement new voting systems in even-numbered years? And so if there's a change to be made, it would have to be made this year. Otherwise, we'd have to continue to use the old machines through 2022.
That is correct, and this is the year to work out any implementation kinks, get ourselves ready to go for what is going to be another very busy election year in 2022.
And my last question is in part based on a conversation that I had yesterday with the chairman of our Board of Elections as he talked about the experience that you had using the old machines one last time with respect to the small school levy and road levy elections that we had in 3 of our communities. Not the whole county, but just limited to the 3 communities. And he informed me that while you were able to soldier through, there were some issues with the machines, and he was concerned that in a larger election they would not hold up. I want to know, would you feel confident running a midterm election with the old machines?
Well, I wouldn't, if I had an option, no, I would prefer to have new equipment going into 2022.
Be careful how you say you'd prefer to have new equipment.
Yeah. Would I feel confident? I'm confident in our staff. I'm confident in our staff to really to work through any issues. What I will say though is that on May 4th, Tuesday, we had parts and pieces that just are not staying connected as well as they should be. We had, for example, the real-time audit log printer that uses a pin connection, like a 16-pin connection. Those pins are starting to snap off and break. They're losing their connectivity, so you're having to have the poll workers check those connections, push them back in. So I wouldn't feel great about it, about using this equipment in 2022. No.
Because I just want to emphasize that the choice we're making here today isn't this ES&S voting system versus the ideal perfect system. We're choosing between an old ES&S system, one that is past the end of its useful life, where we barely petered through the school and road levy elections in 3 communities. I would be truthfully very concerned as someone who will be on the ballot next year with whether or not these machines would keep a correct log of everyone's vote. And if it turns out that ES&S violates their contract, or if there's a secret hidden internet modem in it, which obviously violates the certifications that they've made to us, I'm looking at legal. If they are providing us something that is not certified or outside of the contract, could we break it with them?
Well, Commissioner, I guess the way I would answer that question is, again, under this 3506.05 with the board voting machine examiners, I think it's important to note that our local Board of Elections would not even be able to consider this machinery software if it had not been certified by the state of Ohio. Only the state can certify this equipment for the local boards of elections to consider.
So, Mr. Hackman, let me ask you a more specific question, because I want to make sure we address all the concerns of the public that I've heard. Let's say we bring these voting machines in, and suddenly on my cell phone it goes boop, pop up, local device, voting machine. And go, wow, this is connected to wireless internet. This isn't what we were promised. I mean, we buy the machines, they come in, we spend this money, and they're clearly connected to wireless internet. They clearly have modems that are not what were represented to us. Do you believe, given that it does not fit the model and the representations made in the contract, that we could say you haven't complied with your federal and state certifications, we return these machines?
I do. I believe we would have a cause of action, potentially, absolutely. However, I will get back to, I don't see these machines or voting machines coming to the county unless they are thoroughly analyzed by the state. And
absolutely, thoroughly analyzed. And Commissioner Plechik, you may indeed next year on the dark web out there have someone post that they know how to get into our equipment and they have that secret password, and they're in the process of changing all of those votes. That will be a blatant misinformation. So if you do hear that kind of talk in the future, I have always throughout my career been a show me mentality. And I've dealt with many people who have come in and said, I don't believe this works properly. Show me. And by the time they go through, like you did, coming down and seeing all the levels of security and protection in place, they go out an ambassador because they now understand.
Well, I can tell you, Deputy Director Claire, that I've had some people say that my position that there has to be a paper ballot is too conservative or too expensive or old-fashioned. But I am old-fashioned and I am conservative. And I am concerned that without a paper record of every vote, that some Snidely whiplash could impact our election. And could and actually happen are two different things. But as long as it's in the realm of possibility, people lose faith in the process. And that's why I feel so strongly that we need a voting machine that produces a paper ballot that every voter gets to review. And I acknowledge we might pay a premium for that.
We meet the requirements, and we do have paper voting also, and have always had it in the form of the absentee ballot. So paper ballots are available in our county. Now you will also have a printed ballot that you can review at the polls.
And I don't want the Ivertronic to be misrepresented, because there is a paper record with the current voting machine. It's the real-time audit log. It's on the left-hand side of the machine. That is the official ballot for us. When we conduct recounts, that's what we look at, is the paper roll. So the current machines also are paper-based. The interface is DRE, but that is deemed the official ballot. So when we conduct a recount or an audit, we're literally unraveling those paper rolls and recording those votes and comparing
it. DRE?
That is a direct recording electronic. That is the interface.
Thank you, sir.
But Mr. McDonald, isn't it true that short of an election law expert, you wouldn't be able to look at that receipt that's printing and go, aha, my vote was correctly tallied?
It is visible. The voter can see every vote that they're casting because it's recorded real time. So yes, the voter could see how the machine is recording their vote.
So I'll admit I've never looked closely enough. You're saying that you could see every vote accurately even on the current machine?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And then when the voting session is done, the machine rolls up that paper roll, so to conceal it, it's totally blank for the next voter to have that same opportunity.
Still, I prefer to actually have it print out.
I understand that, and I agree with you. It's much more tangible when it's in your hands. But I just want to point out, I don't want the Ivertronic to be misrepresented as though you're just casting your votes off into an electronic device and not able to verify it yourself. That was a state law and was required.
And at the risk of divulging how I voted, that's the
yes,
the roll up. That's what it looks like. And for the viewing audience, I took the liberty of taking a photo of that just in case this question was ever posed. So,
Very good.
it's like, hey, it's always better to be out in front of it. So,
Yeah.
but yes, there is, and that is, and if somebody were to, for example, say yes to something and then later reverse it, there is a tracking of.
There is, and it drives our recount teams crazy because they are literally saying, vote yes on issue 1, and then the voter comes back and says, no, actually, I want to vote no on it. So we have to be very careful because, yes, that is documented during that vote session. So our recount teams are like, yes, and then they look down, oh, nope, we got to change that. They actually ended up voting no sequentially. They're looking from the top to the bottom. So, yes, there has always been a paper record with the Ivertronic.
So, Mr. President, let me just say,
Thank you, sir.
Given that these machines produce a paper ballot that I can read even with my terrible nearsighted vision, and that they are made in Nebraska, which I say qualifies as America, and that they are not connected to the internet, but if we were to discover that they were magically connected to the internet in violation of state and federal law, we would have a cause of action to get our money back. I'm comfortable supporting this vote today. Of course, with the reservation that if our director or deputy director does not get the machines that we've ordered, and that there is some horrible issue or problem with them, which I rule nothing out. We have to be skeptical. We have to be prepared. And if you receive these machines and say this is not what we purchased, I'm sure that you will come to the commission immediately, and we will work with our county prosecutor to resolve the issue. But I am concerned that if we don't give some time to our Board of Elections to work with these machines, we won't have their hands on them. If we buy something last minute, maybe we will miss some problem or issue. I want you to have a time and a chance to work with your staff so that you're comfortable with these machines before they go to any election, because we have our mayors and our councils and our school boards up this year, and I want to make sure those elections are fairly and freely conducted. And while I'm sure you'll move heaven and earth, even if you're given 3 days to do it, I don't think that's fair to you or to our voters who deserve to have some notice of this.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
And, oh, go ahead, sir.
Just one quick comment.
Yes.
One question, very quick question. I had a concern from a constituent. I don't know if this is an obscure concern or not, but they were saying, well, sure, it's a paper ballot, but I have to leave it there. And why is that, Ron? And I said, well, it impacts the question of whether it's a true secret ballot or not. You know, if you carry it outside, there could be someone out there. How do you feel about that? Let them take their ballot with them.
That's that is
And now, as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story.
That is exactly what we would not want a voter to do, because that must go through the tabulator in order for their vote to count.
Oh, I mean, not the limitations or the machine itself, but just the idea of allowing them to take a copy of their ballot with them. To me, that
okay.
Is it truly a secret ballot then? If they take it outside and someone is waiting to review their vote, maybe at the threat of their job or whatever.
Oh, I see.
Commissioner, I don't think we would ever want to print 2 copies of a vote. One for Ron to keep and one to be deposited in the ballot box.
But I want to frame it.
Well, you might want to frame it, but someone else down the road might want to get 2 votes in.
Yeah, somebody's going to get
So
framed.
there'll be one that you get to hold. John, with his glasses, can get his magnifying glass to make sure he can see what he chose. And you, with a voter who says, it's a paper ballot, but I don't get to keep it. If they keep it, that vote will not count, period. They have to deposit it in order for it to count. So that's the future of voting. I think at this point, we are answering the questions the legislature requires, the Secretary of State requires, the voters require. We've answered that with the equipment that's certified that we're getting for the next, hopefully, 10 to 15 years in Lake County. And down the road, there'll be another change, and you'll look toward the future. But this is what we need today, and you're absolutely right, Commissioner. We need it as soon as possible because we have to do acceptance testing to make sure we did get the right equipment and it meets the requirements. And the director needs to work on getting it implemented for November. So we thank you for proceeding today because it is critical to the voting process that we move forward.
So my response to my constituent was not fully orbed out. I thought in terms of jeopardizing the nature of what we call a secret ballot, someone could review a voter's vote.
The voter
as
will
they-
deposit their vote into the machine. They don't have to stand there and hand it off. They deposit
Right,
their
they're
vote.
protected. In a
They're
sense, it's a
protected.
protection.
Yes.
Yeah. All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
God-
Thank you.
And I will wrap this up after you vote to approve with God bless America.
Amen.
Thank you, ma'am. And as I like to always say, this is the total cost, although this resolution is for $581,182.37. This appropriation will be combined with the $2,224,646.63 that has been allocated by the Ohio Secretary of State for this purchase. That's a true and accurate statement so far? Yes. So far. Then for a total of $2,805,800 $847. That's the out the door price on the equipment. And then on the sales form, there are other expenses relating to the extended warranty. That is maintenance also of what we are all currently already paying, so there will be some offsets there. But that total, which would be by the way, the $581,182.37 is a general fund impact. The $2,224,664.63 is coming from the state of Ohio. The $283,540, that would be a general fund impact. There will be, starting I believe in year 2 and annually thereafter, payments of $70,885.50. That will keep everything finished, and I believe with future certificates of conformance, if there are needs for updates, those will be addressed in that as well. And we are proceeding with the understanding, and I believe, I'm looking at legal, the stipulation is that we will get a updated sales form. There was just not enough time to get that done and be fair to the company. We've got the sales form we have now is a draft document that gives us a strong idea of what we will be receiving. There will be a follow-up document showing full conformity with this purchase relative to this certificate of conformance. And I'm absolutely running out of ways to say the same thing. So have we, I'm looking to legal, we've got every box checked here, we're good?
You do, Commissioner.
I have a 10% discount coupon right here.
You'd like to use your coupon now. Oh,
Mr. President,
sir.
I would just say we'd be remiss if we didn't repeat what Chairman and former Commissioner Dale Fellows shared, which is that $2+ million that we received from the state of Ohio was something that then State Representative Ron Young supported and worked towards. So in no small part, this is possible because of his hard work leading up to funding our local county.
God bless. Thank you. Okay, if there's no further discussion, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes. Thank you all.
In the Finance Department, resolution approving payment of bills as listed on the Commissioner's Approval Journal in the amount of $1,143,463.24.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution approving purchase orders as listed on the Commissioner's Purchase Order Approval Journal in the amount of $417,082.74.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution increasing appropriations of various non-general fund accounts.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes.
Resolution transferring appropriations within various general and non-general fund accounts.
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion? None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Plechnik.
Yes.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes. Okay, this brings us to our departmental reports portion of our meeting. Utilities. Randy?
Thank you, Commissioner. Our special collections season continues this Saturday at the fairgrounds from 8 o'clock in the morning to 2 in the afternoon with a television collection.
Very good. Thank you, sir. County Administrator Jason Boyd.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Just briefly, I just wanted to let folks know that beginning Monday, May the 10th, the main entrance to the County Administration Center will be open to the general public, no longer requiring reservations or appointments with your respective visits. A couple minor exceptions, and I would encourage all folks, and it will be on our website, to call your appropriate departments. The Treasurer's Office, due to some renovation work buttoning up, will open on the 17th of May. You can still use the drop boxes and the drive-through facility located adjacent to the Job and Family Services Department. Our Job and Family Services Department will continue to work in a hybrid manner due to the relationship with the state of Ohio. Once again, I would encourage folks to dial 350-4000 for specific questions with all the various programs that Job and Family Services offer. And the final kind of hybrid models, our building department, they will be open to the public Monday through Friday from 8 to 12 for in-person visits with contractors and residents. Use the balance of the day catching up. They're still extremely busy. Once again, our builders, developers, citizens continue to use the online submissions and the drop boxes that we will maintain moving forward. So once again, beginning Monday, May the 10th, folks will be able to enter the campus through the main administration center. We'll monitor that and see what future objectives looks like as we enter tax collection and so on. Guests will still adhere to the public health standards with masks and social distancing, but once again, we've had a phased reopening strategy. I want to thank the commissioners for kind of working towards this end. I did discuss this with the health commissioner as well last week, so I have a concurrence from Mr. Graham. So this press release will be issued today. Thank you.
And just for a little bit of detail, the renovations at the treasurer's office, that was brought on about due to a water damage. There was a failure water line.
Correct. Yep. That's just we're rebounding from that incident that occurred a few months ago. They were back in there, but need just a little bit more wiggle room to get established. So they will be 7 days later on May the 17th. They'll be up and running. So I want to thank all of our elected officials and our department heads for having unique work schedules and workflow with our residents. It's been a truly team effort the past, good Lord, 14 months as we've worked through maintaining high standards to get the public the services they need. So thanks to the electeds and the department heads, and hopefully we're heading to third round and home here. But so thank you, commissioners.
And just our quick weekly COVID update.
COVID's over.
COVID's over. It's still been declared.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, Commissioner, thank you for that.
Meeting adjourned. We're done.
As Commissioner Hammercheck knows, all the commissioners know, we're kind of concluding the mega pod. When I say we, the guidance of the health district and fire chiefs. I believe there's a second dose maybe tomorrow at Lakeland.
Friday, yes.
Yes, Friday the 7th. And the health district, jump on their website. They are available and able and willing to come to local businesses. You will see some mobile opportunities. I know they had, the health district had their mobile vaccination clinic here in Painesville last week, again this week. I would encourage folks to stay tuned to the health district website. I know they're looking at one in mid-May here in Painesville, across the street from the jail. Details haven't been finalized, so once again, heck of an effort by the health district and all the partners, and you know, we're not alone in this kind of decrease on the demand side. It's happening everywhere. Matter of fact, I read this morning the state of Ohio has requested the feds kind of stockpile some vaccines as the demand load from a statewide perspective mirrors what's going on in Lake County, but we're still outperforming 90% of folks throughout Ohio.
Well said. Thank you, sir. Anything for our administrator? Thank you, Jason. Okay, Madam Clerk.
Yes, I wanted to mention that resolution number 9, revising the commissioner's regular meeting schedule, has to do with the meeting next week. The meeting's going to be on the same day, Thursday, May 13th, but we're changing the time from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So no long meetings next week.
We'll order dinner. Thank you. All right, and on that, moving on to legal.
No reports, Commissioner.
Very good. Thank you for your insights today, by the way. Much appreciated. Okay, do we have any old business to come before the board? All right, hearing none. New business. Do we have any new business?
Mr. President?
Sir.
I just want to give a special thank you to Donna Tyson, who works on many important projects for the commissioners, but she actually just completed, as you might notice, many of us are wearing a new pin today, working with the local company, Polish Promotional Products, PPP, from Willoughby. So we're very grateful for them to prepare this lovely county pin. It's really just our logo, but it's very tastefully done, and we'll be working on getting all the county department heads there. So here's one for Mr. Randy Roethlisberger, Department of Utilities. We're very proud of our county and our county logo, and it's wonderful to see the creativity of our staff and local business to produce this, but we just got them this week, and we're once again grateful to Donna Tyson for some wonderful work.
Excellent, excellent. And I don't know how new this is, but I'm going to again extend welcome to be able to join us to Commissioner Young. God bless you. You are an example of someone who is dedicated to taking care of yourself and taking care of the business of the people. The fact that you have taken on leukemia so openly and publicly is an inspiration for many, I'm sure, and your physical comeback is a very welcome presence here in this room, and I would hope that people would not see our spirited engagements as anything other than serving our public. So God bless you, brother. Good to see you back in that chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
God bless. All right, and with that, this is the part that I'm always hesitant to ask. Jason, do we have any new do we have any new submittals? Fingers are crossed, and the answer is no. Thank you. Okay, with that, we are. Oh, my goodness! I am so terribly sorry. We have a member in attendance in the audience who wishes to address the board in the second public. I am so sorry, Mr. Lima.
That's fine. That's fine. I'm just hoping that maybe the commissioners could have some influence on the city of Painesville so that they change their signs out there to 3 hours instead of 2-hour limited parking. Or maybe 4 hours.
Are they out there chalking tires?
Well, I hope I'm not going out there and finding a ticket. But anyway, just a couple of very brief comments.
We're trying to help the local economy here, so.
Just a couple of very brief comments.
Yes.
I agree that we do need more recent data from 2019, 2020, 2021. That would help to determine a more accurate trend that we might be experiencing in the jail population. And the second comment is that I did in my review, I found that there were 50 inmates who could be classified as violent offenders. So, and there certainly isn't anyone that I know of who would argue against housing violent offenders, whether they're waiting for trial or sentencing or whether they're serving their sentence. And the third comment, as far as revenue generating beds, I think we need to keep in mind that changes in perspective, changes in contracts definitely affect this particular aspect of jail operations. For example, the Youngstown private jail housed hundreds of immigrants. They now house 0. The Geauga County Jail had contracted, or the U.S. Marshal Service, and then through the U.S. Marshal Service, the ICE, the Immigration and Enforcement Agency, contracted for 70 beds. And at one point, they had 70 beds filled at a per diem rate. Currently, there are 5 immigrants housed in the Geauga jail. So the Geauga County will not be receiving money for 65 of those beds. And then finally, ideas that come from left-leaning or right-leaning organizations should be considered on the basis of their sensibleness, not on the basis of their left or right-leaning reputations. So if it's the American Enterprise Institute or the Vera Institute, it's their ideas that need to be considered and evaluated for reasonableness. That's all. Thank you.
Sir.
Let me just,
Sir, yes, Commissioner Young.
10 seconds.
Yes, sir.
I agree with the perspective that every organization and every individual needs to be reviewed based upon their perspectives. At the same time, if they're starting from the premise that we must defund the police in this example, then I develop a perspective. I don't want to use the word bias. I develop a perspective that is not, it's difficult for me to follow the rest of the argument, but I will attempt to do so. Thank you.
Very good. Okay, if there's nothing further to come before this board, I would ask for a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
I will second that. Discussion. None being heard. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Pletchdick.
Yes.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Commissioner Hammercheck.
Yes, this meeting stands adjourned. Thank you for joining us today.